Actually, when that hag was screaming about Russia being Hitler. That Queen of Hearts, Dianne Feinstein, kept telling us Putin was Hitler. Meanwhile, right under her nose, uranium was being taken and sold off to the Russians. She must have known about it. Now, if she didn't know about it, then she's incompetent and should be fired. But then again, you see, I'm getting outraged over something that the government should be outraged over. If we had a legitimate government, the Republicans would have put down their whiskey bottles and their Prozac today, and they would have said, that's it, that's the end of the story, that's the end of the road, we're not taking this anymore, we're holding immediate hearings, and if any of this reaches any level of a crime, we're indicting Hillary and Bill Clinton. We're not going to stand for this. We're going to force them to testify about the money trail, the uranium, the transfers, etc. And we'll bring the daughter in as well. Now, it's one thing to talk about overt corruption. It's another thing to talk about the destruction of our national security interests by selling off the uranium in our own soil. Did you hear what I just said to you? Uranium from our own nation was sold off to the Russians. Now, the secondary question here is, why is this story coming out now? Who is trying to take down Hillary, and who will benefit from this? That is the number one question on the minds of those who can think 2 steps ahead of the news. And I'm pretty sure I know why this is suddenly coming out. The corruption of Hillary Clinton is nothing new. Those of us in the business of investigating and talking about investigations have seen this dirt for years. But now that she's running and she's not sufficiently communistic enough, they're trying to destroy her in order to bring up the fake Indian, Pocahontas Elizabeth Warren, which, as far as I'm concerned, is a very good thing. Because Elizabeth Warren is so unpalatable as a candidate that even the most tepid Republican can beat her. Don't get me wrong. Don't think I'm going to sit here and tell you I'm going to support Republicans right now. I know that there's corruption in that party that would make your head spin. However, there are different levels of everything. And this level of corruption approaches sedition, outright sedition. Now, the New York Times says this: whether donations played any role in the approval of the uranium deal is unknown. How could anyone listening to this show not understand what has gone on? How can anyone listening to this show tell me that you still believe Hillary Clinton is not only worthy of the office of the presidency with such a scummy, filthy relationship that the country itself can't stand anymore, but that the New York Times and other bastions of liberalism are calling it the disastrous Clinton post-presidency? The New York Times, as I just said, reported about the State Department's decision to approve the sale of uranium mines to a Russian company which donated $2.35 million to the Clinton Global Initiative. And then a Russian investment bank promoted the deal, paid Bill $500,000 for a stinking speech in Moscow. The right-wing Washington Post reports that Bill Clinton received $26 million in speaking fees from entities that also donated to the Clinton Global Initiative. The Washington Examiner reports 22 of the 37 corporations nominated for a prestigious State Department award, and 6 of the 8 ultimate winners, while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, were also donors to the Clinton Family Foundation. In other words, they bought their awards. And Reuters, another bastion of the right, says that Hillary Clinton's family charities are refiling at least 5 annual tax returns after a Reuters review found errors in how they reported donations from governments and said they may audit other Clinton Foundation returns in case of other errors. I want to ask you something. If you filed a false tax return and you got caught, would your government, would your IRS, would Obama's IRS permit you to refile your tax return? They put you in jail. They wouldn't let you refile. They would have caught you. What do you mean, when you get caught, you refile? What, if you're Hillary Clinton, you do what you want? Yes. We've gone from overt psychosis to treason, sedition. The story today that broke in the New York Times is the greatest act against America that I've seen in my entire life. I've never seen anything like it. It's the kind of act that in a sane nation that was not drugged would bring about a revolution. A revolution that would unite the people. A revolution saying enough is enough. this corruption of the Clintons has gotten to a point where they must be immediately indicted and tried for the crimes against this nation. It's the greatest scandal of your life. There is no greater scandal I have ever seen in my life. And it is about the uranium in the ground in the United States of America that was sold off to the Russians. And where did this article appear? It appeared in the right-wing New York Times. The right-wing New York Times reported, as a result of this incredible book about the money that's being doled out to all of these corrupt individuals, is the Russian president, an American president, and the woman who would like to be the next one. And at the heart of this tale, according to the New York Times, are several men, leaders of the Canadian mining industry, who are big donors to the endeavors of Bill Clinton and his family. They built, financed, and sold off to the Russians a company that would become known as Uranium One. There are names to these men. One of them is Frank Giustra, Giustra. And he is seen in a picture with former President Bill Clinton at a Clinton Foundation news conference in 2007. Beyond the uranium mines in Kazakhstan that are among the most lucrative uranium mines in the world, this sale, arranged by these men through Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, according to this article, at least allegedly, gave the Russians control of 1/5 of all the uranium production capacity in the United States. Do you have any idea what the strategic implications are for national security? Well, they are so grave that such a sale would have to have been approved by a committee composed of representatives from a number of U.S. governmental agencies. And among the agencies that would have had to approve this sale was none other than the State Department, then headed by Hillary Clinton. And as the Russians gradually assumed control of Uranium One in 3 separate transactions from 2009 to 2013, Canadian records show us that a flow of cash made its way to the Clinton Foundation. Uranium One's chairman used his family foundation to make 4 donations totaling $2.35 million. That's peanuts. That's what the surface shows. And by the way, all of you good liberals, those contributions to the foundation run by, I think, the daughter, were not publicly disclosed by the Clintons, despite an agreement that Mrs. Clinton signed with the Obama White House to publicly identify all donors. Shortly after the Russians announced their intention to acquire a majority stake in Uranium One, guess what happened? Bill Clinton received $500,000 for a speech in Moscow from a Russian investment bank with links to the Kremlin that was promoting Uranium One stock. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Do you have any idea what I'm talking about? I'll go on. This New York Times examination of the Uranium One deal is based on dozens of interviews, as well as a review of public records and securities filings in Canada. But some of the connections between Uranium One and the Clinton Foundation were unearthed by Peter Schweizer. Schweizer is the most amazing author of our time. He's the author of the forthcoming book, Clinton Cash. And the fact of the matter is, this book should bring down the Democrat government. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I, Michael Savage, trust to buy my gold and silver from.
Uranium One became very active in acquiring uranium assets actually in the United States itself. By 2008, 2009, they were a particularly attractive target for the Russian government. They would acquire what would amount to 50% of projected uranium output by 2015.
That's the author that everyone in the world is paying attention to, Peter Schweizer, in his forthcoming book about the Clintons and the money and the scandals. And this is the uranium scandal that in any nation would have brought a demand for immediate justice. Some countries, the government would have fallen because of a thing like this, because it means the government permitted the Russians to buy the uranium right out from under our nose, so to speak. And it was done while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. It's a huge scandal. It's probably the great. I don't know of a larger scandal in my lifetime. I really don't. I know that emotionally, when I read about it this morning in the New York Times, cash flowed to Clinton Foundation as Russians pressed for control of uranium company. my immediate thought was, this is the kind of story that led and will lead to a revolution. This is the kind of story that led to the Russian Revolution. But it really won't in America. You see, the difference between this nation and Russia of 1916 is that the people are fat here and drugged. The Russians were skinny and starved. In other words, the corruption was so bad under the Tsar, and the systems were so broken under the Tsar that the people were hungry. No one's hungry in America. They're fat, overweight, drugged, entertainment, Disneyland, cruises, stuffing their faces, drugs, entertainment, sports. So they don't even know what's going on. They could care less. But this story will affect the thinking voter. And I don't know what percent of the population that votes is thinking, but I would think that the percent of the population that votes that is thinking wouldn't have voted for this rotten, stinking candidate to begin with, because this is nothing new. There is a sea of filth that anyone could have seen going all the way back to Arkansas. She has never been qualified to be anything other than what she was, which is a carpetbagger and a grifter. And so we're not shocked by this, but I am shocked by this. In other words, on one hand, we're not shocked, but on the other hand, the magnitude of it is overwhelming. Why is the magnitude of the uranium story overwhelming? Because it has national security implications. If you sell off the uranium in our own earth to Russia, at the same time she's giving speeches calling Putin Hitler, she is allegedly approving the transfer of this uranium company to Russia. Do you understand this? Where was Lindsey Graham, that fraud, that two-faced, phony Republican pinko? Another one whose skin is too pink for me. And that's a metaphor, by the way. Don't take it in a racial way. Another one, watch out for the pink skin. It's a giveaway. If it's pink, it stinks. Let me put it to you that way. They're a little too clean for me. I don't trust the clean men like Orrin Hatch, who just approved Loretta Lynch. I don't trust guys like this. I never did. They wouldn't let me in their clubs, and I wouldn't join anyway, because I'm more picky than Groucho Marx ever was. When he said famously, any club that would have me as a member, I wouldn't join, it was a very funny joke, wasn't it? Take a look at John McCain now, that crazy maniac. The man belongs in a straitjacket. A maniac. Almost caused a revolution in Egypt. Almost brought about a war between Russia and the United States, and this maniac is still in the Senate. None of them ever quit. Don't you understand that? So if you expect this uranium scandal to bring Hillary to the realization that she's unelectable, you're mistaken. And the reason you're mistaken is you have no idea what psychosis is. I've told you 1,000 times that anyone who runs for higher office, basically there's something wrong with them mentally. I don't care how good they are. There is something wrong with anyone who wants to be a politician. Or they're so corrupt that they have no other way to make a living. Now, I want to backtrack for a minute. A plane bound for Amman, Jordan goes down in the Caspian Sea. The crash yields no survivors except the hijacker. And a cask containing an agent of unprecedented destructive potential is missing from the plane wreckage. A carefully plotted terrorist attack has been put into motion, and the resulting chaos might be enough to push America toward another costly war. Countdown to Mecca, it's a gripping page-turner.
Savage.